The air of the world feels heavy, as if creation itself is holding its breath. Nations rise against nations, and every city seems to tremble with an unease that no one can name. The noise of politics, the clash of voices, and the endless stream of news all point to a single truth that few dare to say out loud. Something greater is approaching, something ancient. It is not the first time the earth has felt this weight. Long ago, the prophets spoke of a season when the crowns of men would lose their shine, when thrones built on pride would turn to dust, and when the rightful king would return to claim what was his. Many laughed then, as they laugh now, yet history moves in circles, and the pattern of prophecy always finds its way back. You can see it if you look closely. The empires of money and technology promise salvation, but bring restlessness. The world grows faster, but emptier. Humanity keeps building higher towers. Yet no one knows why the ground beneath them shakes. There is a whisper beneath all the chaos, an old voice rising through the noise. It says, "The kingdom of man is not forever." Every generation has believed itself to be the last. But this one feels different. The symbols of power that once seemed unshakable now flicker like candles before the wind. The questions that used to be about politics have changed. They have turned into questions about destiny. Who rules the earth when every ruler falls? Who writes the story when every empire fades? The scriptures spoke of a kingdom that will never end, a reign not bound by borders or armies. It was promised before time began, and sealed by a king who once walked among men. He came not with soldiers, but with mercy. He wore no crown of gold, but one of thorns, and though the world forgot his face, the heavens never did. Now the signs return like echoes from eternity. The unrest of the nations, the hunger for meaning, the longing for justice that no court can give. The old world creaks like a ship before the storm, and somewhere beyond the horizon, the sound of a trumpet waits to be heard. This is not the end of the story. It is the pause before the curtain rises, the last night before the crown. And if you stay until the end, you will see why every kingdom of men must fall before the final kingdom stands. In the beginning there was no war, no crown of iron, no hunger for power. The earth was new and unbroken, and a garden lay at its heart. Rivers ran like silver veins through the soil, and every leaf seemed to hum with light. In that garden, humanity walked with its creator, not as slaves but as stewards. There was no throne because there was no rebellion. The king ruled through harmony, and his law was love. That first kingdom was not built by hands. It needed no walls, no soldiers, no treasury. Its foundation was trust. Its glory was peace, and its citizens were clothed in innocence. The presence of God filled the air like morning dew. Work was joy, rest was holy, and the language of creation was praise. That was Eden, the kingdom that reflected heaven on earth. But within every heart lay the seed of choice. Freedom was both gift and test. And one day the garden heard a voice, not its own. It promised knowledge. It promised power. It whispered that humanity could rule itself without the king. The lie was simple and seductive. You can be like God. And with that one thought, the first rebellion began. When the fruit was taken, the light of Eden dimmed. The rivers still ran, but their music changed. The ground that once yielded without effort now resisted. The wind turned sharp. The voices that once sang in unity now spoke in shame. The throne of harmony was shattered, and the first kingdom fell not by armies, but by pride. From that day forward, humanity wandered. They built altars of stone and cities of ambition, trying to rebuild what was lost. Yet every monument they raised stood crooked because the foundation beneath was fractured. The descendants of Adam built kingdoms of their own, each one an imitation of the first paradise, yet each one poisoned by the same desire to rule apart from the true king. Empires rose like mountains and fell like waves. Pharaohs, emperors, kings, and conquerors all carried within them a faint memory of that first rule. They wore crowns, but their thrones were built on dust, even in their glory. They felt haunted by a silence they could not name, a longing for the voice that once walked with them in the cool of the day. Still, the promise lingered. Even as humanity drifted farther from the garden, the king did not abandon his world. In the midst of exile, a whisper remained that one day a seed would come, born of woman, who would crush the serpent and restore what was broken. Prophets would later call him the Root of David, the Prince of Peace, the Lion and the Lamb. Génération passed, and the garden grew distant, more myth than memory. Yet in every sunrise and every storm, creation itself seemed to ache for restoration. The mountains waited for the footstep of the king. The seas churned as if restless for his command. The stars still burned with the same light that once shone over Eden, as if refusing to forget. The story of mankind is the story of that longing. Every civilization, every philosophy, every prayer uttered in the dark is an echo of the first kingdom. We have searched for meaning in temples and machines, in gold and in glory. But the truth remains unchanged. The world will never be whole until the rightful king returns to rule again. And so, from the dust of exile, the first prophecy was born. It said that a day would come when heaven and earth would touch once more, when the garden would reopen, and the throne of God would dwell among men. The angels called it hope. The prophets called it promise, and all creation still calls it home. Before the kingdoms of men had names, before Rome raised its walls or Babylon carved its towers, there was a whisper carried through the ages. It spoke of a king who would come, not by conquest but by covenant. The promise began in the tents of Abraham and was written in the stars above his head. God told him that from his seed would rise a nation, and through that nation, a ruler whose throne would never end. Abraham looked at the desert sky and believed what no man had ever seen, that one day heaven would give earth its rightful king. Génération passed, and the promise narrowed. In the days of David, a shepherd became a king, not because of power but because of faith. Through him came another vow that his throne would endure forever. The prophets recorded it, their words trembling like fire in the air. Isaiah saw it first, a vision brighter than the sun. He spoke of a child born and a son given, whose name would be Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. His government would have no end. Daniel, Centurilateur, dreamed of kingdoms rising and falling: Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome, but all were like beasts devouring one another. Then, in his vision, came one like the Son of Man, descending with clouds of glory. To him was given dominion, glory, and a kingdom that would never pass away. The scrolls of prophecy began to align like pieces of a divine puzzle. They spoke of one figure, one reign, one return. Ezekiel saw dry bones turn to life and a people restored under one shepherd. Micah named the city where the king would be born, small among thousands, yet chosen from eternity. Zechariah saw him entering Jerusalem, not on a war horse, but on a humble colt. Every prophecy, every line, every dream pointed to the same truth, that history itself was being written toward the coming of a king. But what made these prophecies different from all others was not merely prediction. It was the portrait they painted of a king unlike any other. This king would not rule with fear, but with righteousness. He would not build his throne from conquest, but from compassion. The sword in his hand would be truth, and the crown on his head would be holiness. In him, justice and mercy would kiss, and the exile of creation would finally end. For the people of Israel, this hope became their heartbeat through exile and slavery. Through invasion and silence, they clung to the promise written on parchment and sealed by blood. The prophets died without seeing it fulfilled. But their words did not die with them. Like embers buried in ash, the promise waited for breath. Then, in the fullness of time. When empires ruled the earth and men thought God had gone silent, a cry broke the midnight air of Bethlehem. It was the sound of prophecy becoming flesh. A child was born in a manger, not in a palace. Angels sang not to emperors but to shepherds. The king had come, but the world did not recognize him. That night, the scrolls of Isaiah and Daniel and Micah burned with life. The ancient words had taken form in the silence of the stable, yet the crown he came to wear was not of gold, and the throne he claimed was not of marble. The first act of the promised king was humility. The kingdom of heaven had entered the dust of earth, but only those who listened with faith could hear its heartbeat, and so the promise moved from parchment to person. The king had come to his own world, and though few believed, the heavens rejoiced. The story of prophecy had become the story of history, and time itself began to turn toward his return. History is the long echo of mankind, reaching for divinity and falling short. Every empire that rose from the earth began with a dream to last forever. Yet each one, no matter how proud or glorious, ended the same way with ruins, ashes, and a forgotten crown. Babylon built its walls so high they kissed the sky, believing its gates could defy the heavens. Persia stretched its borders across continents, convinced that it ruled by the favor of gods. Greece worshipped wisdom, Rome worshipped power, and both believed their thrones would never fall. But stone crumbles, iron rusts, and the pride of men always returns to dust. Through all of this, the prophets watched and wrote. Daniel lived through Babylon's splendor and its fall, standing as a witness that no kingdom of men could outlive the kingdom of God. He saw Nebuchadnezzar rise in arrogance and descend into madness, crawling on the earth like the beast he once ruled. He saw Cyrus the Great rise as deliverer and yet fade into the silence of history. The scrolls of time turned, and every name that once shook the earth became a footnote beneath the words, and it came to pass. The pattern was always the same. Men reached for eternity through conquest. But eternity could not be taken, it could only be given. The more they built, the more they forgot the builder. The more they ruled, the less they remembered the true king. The throne of heaven does not compete with earthly thrones. It simply outlasts them. Every fallen empire becomes a sermon carved in stone, reminding the world that power without righteousness is a crown made of smoke. Rome tried to become eternal. Its emperors called themselves sons of gods. Its banners declared dominion without end. Yet, within its walls, a new kind of kingdom was being born, not one of swords, but of souls. Fishermen spoke in its streets about a king who conquered death. The message spread faster than armies, and no decree could silence it. By the time Caesar's marble crumbled, the name of that humble king had reached beyond the empire's borders. The cross, once a symbol of shame, had become a crown of glory. And still the story continued. Centuries turned, and thrones changed hands. Monarchs claimed divine right. Revolutions tore them down, and new empires rose from the dust of old ones. Yet in every age, the same rhythm played the same, longing for a kingdom that would not decay. Artists painted it, poets dreamed of it, prophets still whispered its promise. Even the skeptics could feel it, that strange ache for justice and peace that no government could provide. The Middle Ages called it the City of God. The Reformers called it the Kingdom Within. The mystics called it the Eternal Light. Whatever the name, it was the same yearning, the echo of Eden and the shadow of the throne that never fell. The true kingdom had not vanished, it had gone underground, waiting for its time to rise. For even in the darkest centuries, when faith flickered and men crowned themselves gods, the king was still writing his story in secret. He ruled not from capitals but from hearts. His ambassadors were not princes but servants. His victories were not battles but conversions. The soil of history has always belonged to him, even when men thought they owned it. Now, looking back across millennia, the ruins of every empire tell the same tale. The ziggurats of Babylon, lie buried under sand. The palaces of Persia stand silent in the desert wind. The marble of Rome glows under the moon, like a ghost of forgotten glory. Yet the kingdom that began in the heart of a carpenter still stands, alive in the prayers of millions. The lesson is as clear as it is ancient. All thrones built on pride become dust. All glory without grace fades like morning mist. But the kingdom built on truth endures because its foundation is not of this world. The king who once wore a crown of thorns now waits to wear the crown of eternity. And every fallen empire only proves his sovereignty. From the fall of Babylon to the rise of nations today, the message remains unchanged. Power without justice collapses. Wealth without mercy withers. Pride without repentance leads to ruin. But the kingdom of heaven, quiet, patient, unseen, moves forward through it all, unshaken. And though men still raise their monuments to themselves, the sky remains the same witness, for above every capital and every flag, there is still a throne higher than all others, a throne that will not turn to dust, and when the story reaches its final page, that throne will stand alone. There comes a time in every civilization when pride no longer hides itself, when men no longer whisper rebellion but celebrate it, when the kingdoms of the earth stop pretending to serve the heavens and begin to worship their own reflection. We have entered that time again. The ancient temptation has returned in a modern mask, shining with the colors of progress, technology, and power. Humanity, as in Eden, reaches once more for the crown that does not belong to it. This is the age of imitation crowns. They are made not of gold or iron, but of influence, fame, and control. Kings once ruled nations. Now individuals rule digital empires. The throne has moved from the palace to the screen, from the temple to the self. The ancient lie still echoes in new language. You can be anything. You can be your own god. The serpent's whisper has simply learned a modern tone. Empires of ideology have replaced empires of land. People no longer build cities of stone, but systems of belief, each one declaring itself the light of the world. Yet every ideology promises freedom and delivers chains. Every crown forged by human hands eventually breaks under its own weight. For the throne of the heart cannot hold the weight of eternity when it is built on dust. In every corner of the earth, you can see the signs of this age. The hunger for power disguised as justice, the pursuit of wealth masked as progress, the worship of self hidden behind the language of rights. Humanity has crowned itself king, yet the world feels emptier than ever. We have built towers higher than Babel, but our hearts have never been lower. We speak of unity, yet division deepens. We speak of peace, yet every mind trembles in quiet war. The prophets long ago saw this age. They called it the time when men would honor creation but deny the Creator, when truth would be traded for convenience, and when love would grow cold. They warned that when light is treated as darkness and darkness as light, judgment does not come as punishment but as consequence. The world begins to collapse under the weight of its own choices. Still, in the midst of this imitation, there remains a remnant, a people who remember that crowns made by men cannot save. They live quietly, unseen, holding faith while the world celebrates rebellion. They are the seeds of the true kingdom, planted in the soil of this false one. Every generation has them, hidden like embers beneath the ash. They are not powerful by worldly measure, yet they carry within them the fire of the coming dawn. This age, for all its brilliance, trembles beneath the surface. The machines hum, but they cannot silence the groaning of creation. The markets rise, but they cannot buy peace. The cities glow with artificial light, yet their hearts grow darker with each passing year. The imitation crowns glitter for a moment, but the dust remembers what eternity forgot. And above it all, the heavens watch. The true king remains silent, not absent. His patience is not weakness, but mercy. Every empire is given its hour, and this is ours. Yet when the hourglass empties, Only one kingdom will remain. The imitation crowns will fall, and the rightful crown will return. The world does not yet see it, but the signs are already here. The shaking of systems, the exhaustion of nations, the weariness in every human soul, that has tasted power and found it bitter. We are approaching the turning point written long ago, the moment when the kingdoms of men will reach their height, only to crumble beneath the weight of their own glory. And when the last crown made by human hands falls to the ground, a trumpet will sound in the distance, not of war, but of awakening. The heavens will stir, the earth will remember, and the story of every imitation crown will end where it began, with the return of the true king. Every age believes it is ordinary until history looks back and calls it prophetic. The world now spins faster than its own wisdom. Nations speak of progress, yet the air feels heavy with something ancient and unseen. There are whispers, faint but persistent, moving through the noise of modern life. They rise between headlines, in the tremble of markets, in the silence of exhausted souls. It is the sound of a kingdom approaching, quiet but unstoppable, like dawn breaking after a long and sleepless night. The prophets once spoke of this rhythm. They said that before the end of one age and the birth of another, the earth itself would groan, naught in destruction, but in labor. They said that the hearts of men would grow restless, chasing after, meaning they cannot define. You can see it everywhere. People wander through endless abundance, surrounded by more comfort than any empire before them, yet still starving for peace. The old systems no longer satisfy, but no one knows what to build in their place. Science has mapped the stars, yet lost the wonder that first made men look up. Technology connects the world, yet isolates every heart. Even faith has been traded for spectacle, truth for opinion, and reverence for convenience. Humanity stands at the height of its own creation, staring into the mirror of power. And behind the reflection, something ancient watches back. The scriptures said that when knowledge increased and love grew cold, when nations would rage and the world would cry for peace but find none, the time would draw near, yet the signs would not only be in wars or disasters, they would be in the quiet places, in the way hearts ache for justice, in the tears of those who still believe in goodness. The birth pains of the new kingdom are not always loud. They are often felt in whispers. Listen closely, and you can hear them. The unease in every headline, the longing in every conversation about hope, the quiet confession of people who have everything but still feel empty. Even the planet itself seems to sigh, weary under the weight of greed and neglect. These are not random events. They are echoes of prophecy. The world is being prepared, whether it knows it or not. And yet, the true message of these whispers is not fear, it is mercy. The king delays his return, not to punish, but to invite. Each moment of confusion is also a call to awaken. Each collapse of false security is a reminder that the foundations of this world were never meant to last. The shaking is not the end. It is the clearing of the ground for what is to come. In the midst of it all, there are still those who listen. They are not prophets in deserts, but ordinary souls in cities and small towns. Men and women who still pray in quiet rooms, who still look to the heavens with expectation. They sense the movement beneath history, like a heartbeat beneath the surface of time. To them, every trial feels less like chaos and more like birth. If you look beyond the noise, you can see small signs of awakening. People once indifferent to faith now seek truth again. Old scriptures long dismissed are being read with new eyes. The ancient words of the prophets feel strangely current, as if they were written for this very hour. And though many mock or ignore it, the whisper continues. It is patient, persistent, unafraid. The world is not ending, it is transforming. What feels like collapse is actually alignment. What seems like silence is preparation. The kingdom that was promised is drawing near, not with armies or fire, but with truth and light. Soon, the whispers will turn into a voice, and that voice will shake both heaven and earth. Until then, the wise will listen, the humble will wait, and the faithful will endure, for the noise of this world is only temporary. But the whisper of the coming kingdom will never fade. The world has always admired power. It bows to crowns, fears swords, and worships strength. Yet when the true king came, he wore no armor. His throne was not made of gold, and his army carried no banners. It came quietly, walking among fishermen, lepers, and outcasts. His words carried more authority than empires. Yet his voice was gentle enough to calm the sea. He healed the sick with a touch, forgave sinners with a word, and loved those the world had forgotten. This was no ordinary ruler. This was the king who chose a cross before a throne. When he stood before Pilate, the Roman governor could not understand him. Pilate asked, "Are you a king then?" And he answered, "My kingdom is not of this world." With those words, he revealed the greatest secret of all. The kingdom of heaven was not built through conquest, but through surrender. Its victory would not come by bloodshed, but by sacrifice. The power of this king was not in his armies, but in his obedience. They mocked him, crowned him with thorns, and nailed him to a cross. The sign above his head read "King of the Jews," meant to humiliate, yet it became a declaration written by the hands of his enemies. The earth shook when he breathed. His last, darkness covered the land. The Creator hung upon the wood of his own creation, and the world did not understand that this was not defeat. It was the coronation of love. For 3 days the grave held its breath. The kings of men slept in their palaces, unaware that their crowns had just lost their meaning. Then the stone rolled away. Death was broken. The empty tomb stood as the first throne of the new kingdom. The king who had died now lived, and his rule was unlike any the world had seen. No army could resist him, for he ruled the unseen. No nation could contain him, for his kingdom was within the hearts of those who believed. From that moment forward, history changed course. The empires that crucified him faded, but his name remained. The persecutors became the converts. The enemies became ambassadors. The symbol of execution became the emblem of hope. This was the great reversal written before time began. The first would become last, and the king of suffering would become the Lord of glory. Even now, his kingdom grows in quiet places. It has no borders, nor capital, nor flag. Yet it spans the world. It moves through acts of mercy, through words of truth, through hearts that choose compassion over cruelty. Its citizens are not defined by tribe or nation, but by love. Wherever forgiveness conquers hatred, the kingdom expands. Wherever humility silences pride, the throne of the king is set. This kingdom does not rise or fall with elections or wars. It does not depend on approval or wealth. It grows like seed in the soil, unseen at first, but certain to bloom. The world still misunderstands it, still measures greatness by noise and numbers, still crowns its idols with gold. But the king who bore the cross still reigns, and his crown cannot be taken. And though the world continues to chase after imitation crowns, his remains unshaken. For every crown of pride will one day bow before the crown of thorns that became the crown of life. The cross was not the end. It was the beginning of a kingdom that death itself could not destroy. This is the heart of the mystery. The king who gave everything now prepares to return, not in weakness, but in glory. The same hands that once washed the feet of men will soon hold the scepter of eternity. The same voice that forgave the thief on the cross will one day call the nations to judgment and to joy. And the world will finally understand that the greatest power ever shown was not domination, but love. The cross was his throne before the crown, and through it the king wrote the law of the new creation. Mercy triumphs over judgment. There are moments in time when the veil between heaven and earth grows thin, when the noise of history begins to fade and something eternal draws near. The prophets spoke of a day when the heavens would open when every hidden thing would be revealed, and when the true king would return to make all things new. That day is not fantasy. It is the fulfillment of every longing that has ever lived within the human heart. Imagine the silence before dawn, the pause before the first light touches the earth. In that silence, the world will know. The systems of men will tremble, not in destruction, but in recognition. Every monument, every crown, every flag will bow to a power that is not of this world. The sky will not shatter in violence, but unfold in majesty, like a curtain being drawn to reveal the stage of eternity. The scriptures describe it in symbols because language cannot contain it. Trumpets sound not to summon war, but to announce justice. The sun darkens, not from despair, but because a greater light has arrived. Angels stand at the edges of creation, their wings shimmering with the reflection of the returning king. Every eye will see him, and every heart will understand that the story has always been leading to this moment. He will not come as the wounded man of Golgotha, but as the risen Lord of all creation. The crown of thorns will be replaced with the crown of glory. His eyes will be like fire, not of rage, but of perfect truth. His robe will be dipped in the blood of redemption, not conquest, and his name will be written not on scrolls or monuments, but upon the hearts of those who waited for him in faith. For the righteous, this moment will be light after centuries of night. For the proud, it will be a mirror that cannot be escaped. Yet even in judgment, there will be mercy. For the King comes not to destroy, but to restore. The earth that groaned will breathe again. The rivers will run pure. The nations will learn peace, not by treaty, but by transformation. The curse will lift, and the song of Eden will return. Every tear shed in secret will be gathered. Every injustice left unanswered will find its reckoning. Every promise that seemed forgotten will bloom again. The scars of history will become the testimony of grace. The kingdoms of this world will become the kingdom of our Lord and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. And when that sky opens, no voice will be left silent. The mountains will bow, the oceans will still, the stars will burn brighter than they ever have. The language of every nation will merge into a single sound, not of fear, but of worship. The King will stand, and creation will finally recognize its true ruler. This is not the end of the world, but the beginning of the real one, the beginning of the age that has no sunset. The day the King returns will not erase time, but redeem it. All things lost will be found. All things broken will be healed. The song that began in Eden will rise again, no longer in longing, but in fulfillment. And when the sky opens, you will understand that every whisper, every prophecy, every act of faith was leading to this. The true kingdom will no longer be hidden. The King will no longer be unseen. And the light that first said, "Let there be," will speak once more. And this time it will say, "Let there be forever." Pause for a moment and breathe. You have walked through the stories of empires, through prophecies and promises, through light and shadow. Now the question no longer belongs to history, it belongs to you. For every prophecy ever written is not only about nations and kings, it is about the soul. The kingdom that is coming is not just a future event. It is an invitation that begins within the human heart. Ask yourself what throne rules your life. Every person serves something. Some serve fear, some ambition, some memory that refuses to fade. Some build small kingdoms made of possessions or pride, only to find them crumbling when the winds of life rise. The truth is simple but hard to face. We cannot serve two kings. The crown we chase determines the world we live in. The final kingdom is not about escape. It is about alignment. It calls you not to run from the world, but to see it through the eyes of eternity. The return of the King is not only a day on a calendar, it is a mirror held before your soul. When he comes to make all things right, what will he find ruling your heart? Will he see faith or fear, surrender or resistance, love or self? This kingdom does not begin with armies or laws, It begins when one person kneels in quiet surrender. It begins when forgiveness replaces bitterness, when humility replaces pride, when the desire to serve becomes stronger than the hunger to be seen. Each time a heart turns toward goodness, the kingdom expands. Each act of compassion, each prayer whispered in secret, each moment of honesty in a dishonest world is a seed of that eternal reign. The prophets wrote about nations, but the king always looked at individuals. He did not die for crowns or monuments. He died for hearts, the ones that break easily, the ones that wander, the ones that try and fail and try again. The kingdom he brings is not built for the perfect, it is built for the redeemed, and its gates are open to all who will walk through them with humility. Think about the years of your life, the decisions, the regrets, the hopes. The coming of the final kingdom means none of it is wasted. Every tear, every joy, every unanswered prayer becomes a thread in the great design of restoration. The king who returns will not erase your story. He will complete it. And as the world rushes toward its own noise, there is still a quiet place waiting for you. It is found not on screens or stages, but in stillness. There, the king still whispers your name. He is not far away. The distance between you and him is only as wide as your surrender. The final kingdom is not just a prophecy to watch for. It is a choice to live for. You do not have to wait for the sky to open to belong to it. You belong when you love truth, when you walk with mercy, when you forgive, when you hope, even when hope feels small. For those who live as its citizens now, the return of the king will not be a shock. It will be recognition. This is not only the story of history, it is the story of you. The gates of the final kingdom are already opening, one heart at a time. And the king still says what he has always said: follow me. The story has led us from the garden to the cross, from the fall of empires to the promise of a kingdom that never ends. Yet here we stand, between two worlds, caught in the tension of what is and what will be. The king has come once in humility and will come again in glory. But in this in-between, he calls his people to live as citizens of a realm not yet seen. This is the life of those who dwell between kingdoms, walking through a fading world while belonging to an eternal one. Living between kingdoms means remembering that power is not the same as purpose. The world measures greatness by wealth and visibility, but the final kingdom measures it by faithfulness. Every act of honesty in a dishonest age, every choice to forgive when hatred feels easier, every prayer whispered when hope seems distant. These are royal deeds. The king rules now through hearts that choose his ways before his arrival. You may feel small, but each moment of obedience is a stone in the foundation of the coming world. In this waiting, do not despair. The silence of God is not absence. It is preparation. The delay of his return is mercy, giving one more chance for the lost to be found. Each sunrise is a reminder that time still serves his purpose, that every hour given is an invitation to live with eternity in view. You are not a bystander in this story. You are part of the unfolding of prophecy, a living witness that the kingdom is real. To live between kingdoms is to carry light in a world that prefers darkness. It is to love without guarantee, to serve without applause, to believe without seeing. It is to hold peace in the midst of storms, to hope when reason has run dry. It is to look upon the brokenness of the world and still say, the king is coming. And even now, he reigns. The final kingdom is closer than it appears. Every generation that has longed for justice, every martyr that refused to bow, every soul that chose mercy over might has brought us closer to that day. The world may laugh, but the laughter will fade. The heavens may seem silent, but the silence will break. The same voice that spoke light into existence will speak again. And this time, creation will answer. So hold your faith. Live as if the throne were already visible, because it is. Live as if every act of goodness echoes in eternity, because it does. Do not be distracted by the crowns that glitter for a moment. The true crown is the one that never fades. The one the King will place upon those who endure, from Eden to Revelation, from the dust to the stars. This has always been the story. The kingdom of God was never about escape, but transformation. And when the King returns, he will not destroy the world. He will heal it. The rivers will run clear again. The sky will sing again. The curse will end. And every heart that chose love in the waiting will shine with the light of his glory. The question that remains is the same one that echoes through every age. Which kingdom do you belong to? The one that fades, or the one that forever stands? The story of prophecy is not only about the future, it is about your present, your choices, your hope. The King will come, as he said he would. Until that day, live as if the kingdom is already here, because in truth, it is. Blessings.